Clearing now, Captain. Definitely Federation starship. Accessing registry.
Looks like they had a rough ride.
NCC 1701 C. USS Enterprise.
Alright, hey, welcome to the Sloppy Modeler. Welcome back. This is update number 3 on the USS Enterprise C, NCC 1701C, from yesterday's Enterprise. The scene where there's some time travel or a space rift involved and a massive battle, and they go back to engage the Romulans in order to save the Klingons, thereby avoiding a 20-year-long war with the Federation, which the Federation was losing. So if you haven't seen the episode, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and it does do some mental gymnastics with the time travel, especially with Tasha Yar getting captured in that battle and creating a daughter eventually, which in turn comes back to haunt the USS Enterprise D later on, and kind of some shocking moments when kind of some of that stuff happens. So let's talk about the hull and where that's at. So you can see I've got it taped up, but a couple of things that really, it's all closed up as far as the wiring goes. Everything is complete on the inside. The reason that I showed you in episode 2, the reason that I pulled these out, those old LEDs out, which are here, is that it was causing too much thickness between that part of the hull, and it wasn't closing up, and it was kind of forcing that apart. So by going to those small SMDs for these pieces here, what that did is it gave me enough room to then close this up properly. So if I do wire this up quickly, and essentially I let this burn in for almost 14 hours since our last update, and all this stuff was put in place. So I'm pretty solidly convinced that all of the wiring works and everything is going to be fine. So couple of things prior to, you can see here, I think you can just see there's a little bit of light coming through on that side, and that's because that's lifted up a little bit, and if you just pinch it down it goes. I was not able to do that with the 3 lights that were in here, the nav lights. I wasn't able to close that up, and it was causing me too much. It was going to be really a glue challenge or an epoxy challenge. Now this hull is going to seal up really, really, really nice. So I'm pleased with that. And then the lighting has turned out fantastic. It's got solid lighting all the way around on the bottom side. The 2 red navs and the 2 green navs look good. Red on this side is fantastic. Green on that side looks great. There is a bit of a challenge that these 2 are a different hue and color than that new SMD. But at this stage I'm not going to mess with it. That white is really coming through quite nicely. On the top, we've got the nav light. So what I did is I added a 5mm white based on I perched a piece of styrene across the bottom of the C deck and put that 5mm white in there, and it really lights it up nicely. The SMD I put in here for the I'm sorry, not the SMD. I put in a 3mm white into the nav blinker, and that's on that separate circuit, so that is good to go. Our red, white, and green nav lights are here, And additionally, the lights in the side, like here and here, those have come through really, really nice. And there are a couple of spots where it comes through blue, but I don't know, like here's one for this blue, but I don't know if that's from the tape or if that's from, that might be from the blue shrink wrap that I used on that wiring. But you know what? I'm all right with that because it kind of looks pretty cool, and it's not overpowering, and it just looks like a blue light instead of a white light in those particular windows. And there's a couple of spots that have that in that place. Now that'll get diminished a little bit when I go ahead and put in the the microcrystal clear to make these windows go. So that is the hull, which has been lit and is now ready to seal up. I'm ready to glue this and then tape off what needs to be taped off and get painted. I do need to drill my hole here in the bottom for the little sensor dome that goes in here. It's a two-part process, so I'll get that taken care of. But for the most part, I'm pretty thrilled with how this is turning out now, making those adjustments on the nav lights. All right, so that is the primary hull has been done and wired up. We'll set that aside for a moment. I guess we'll go to a nacelle. Here is the nacelle that has been primed in black. I need to buff and sand this a little bit, and then I'll be ready for my first color of light gray on there. That turned out, the seams on there look pretty nice. I'm looking at it under primer, and it's good. It's a good look. This will be nice and dark for some of those panel lines in there, and then do the dark or light gray on top of this. Should bring that forward, and then these nacelles look absolutely fantastic with the cotton cover, which will be white there, and that looks great. So the nacelles are both primed and ready to go. And now we're getting to the question of the secondary hulls. And the secondary hull, I'm going to pull this apart to show you what I've done here. And I do have some more engineering to go through as we move this. But secondary hull's got lights on the bottom, through that section there, and across the neck, that portion there, and it gives me lots of light all throughout there. I took a very thick 0.04 mil piece of styrene, cut it to size over the impulse engine deck. And then what I did is I glued in 2 of the 0608 SMD blues that go into there, and super glued those in. I haven't wired them in yet, but that's easy. That's the easy part. And then glued that to the back of this piece here. So that is now ready to glue in after I get this wired. The back part is ready to glue in. Now, the engineering that I have to do is I have to figure out I'm going to go ahead and put this back together because that's what you do when you're mocking things up. All right, so a couple of things. There is a little bit of a gap here on this impulse engine, and I'm going to have to fill that. And then this is kind of a ridge, that's kind of a ridge, and I'm just going to have to play with that. I'm going to fill this here. This is a ridge seam. On the Yamaguchi, that's filled in, and that's just going to be a pain in the backside to try to do the red pinstripes over the back of that. So I'm going to fill that and sand it, and then fill that. But what you've got here, this is a raised edge going into that raised edge, and I've got to line all that up, and by gluing in this side first, and that's got a ridge there that I have to sand down. It's got a ridge there, so all of that's going to need work. And then it's also got putty holes that are going to need to be filled in, and sanding in there is just a pain in the neck. And then filling that gap, and then that really doesn't line up super well, but it's going to. So that is going to be, thank you AMT for that. That's going to be the biggest sand and fill and headache portion of all of this once we're underway. Next is how to paint the deflector dish, and it fits in really nice. It snaps in really nice, and as you can see here on the deflector dish, in the photos, I think I might even have that upside down. Let's try it this way. I think there's one, I guess not. There's not left or right, just up and down. So the deflector dish technically has hull color that comes up to that ridge point right there, which means I've got to figure out how to tape that off or use some kind of taping off a big circle like that with that depressed center is it's not fun. It's hard. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. Paint this the hull color of the light gray. That I think will once it goes in, will go in without a seam. But we'll have to see if I have to light block it once it's in. And then, so light blocking that, I'm going to put at least 2 coats of paint on the black on the outside of it, and then a coat of white. Then glue it in, and then you're still going to have some light blocking issues, I'm guessing, with that clear. Next, I think what I'm going to do is rely on the hull lighting, and I'm going to have to check that out. Maybe I can look at that right now, as a matter of fact. I think what I'm going to do is rely on the hull lighting that's already in there to light up that deflector dish. I don't know if it gives me enough juice, but we're going to see. And actually, there's double the hull lighting that I've got there. All right, so let's go this way. Here's my reds, and here's my negatives. Yeah, look at that. That's a lot of light. All right, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm not going to try to add. Oh, we're still not lit up here. That side's gone. Oh, hold on. Because this really has a lot of light in here that I want you to see. Yeah, there we go. So there is a ton of light coming through that deflector dish. Just absolutely a huge, it's like a flashlight, right? So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to, again, paint the outside of this as the hull color. And then I'm going to paint, and boy, that looks nice. That is a nice piece there. Then I'm going to paint the inside of the deflector dish with a fade white. So I'm going to fog that inside, fade white, and then fade to blue, to a darker blue towards the outside edge. Never done that before. It's going to be a significant paint experience because I've got a real fine paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is just start by lining this out here with white, and then a pale blue, and then finally a medium blue. And I might actually use this medium blue that I originally was going to use for the hull right here. So I might actually, towards the final outside edge, go with that medium blue. So this blue to this one, and start actually with the pale blue gray, and then start with the actual, start with the actual hull color of light gray. So I think that will come together, and there's so much light in there that it's anything you use in there is going to light that up. Now that I'm thinking about it, I might even move to a transparent blue first, and just give me a hull color. So I'll see, and then these ridges are nice enough. I'll take a black and put that in. So that's kind of where we're at, and we will come back to you in the second half of update number 3. Appreciate you tuning in, and appreciate your continued viewership. This is going to be exciting. It's going to be an exciting little kit now that I'm starting to see some of this stuff come together. Again, definitely some challenges with that grooving. You can see the light bleeds already coming through a couple of those. I think that's going to look nice on the deflector dish. On that, on the impulse engine. And what I'm going to do there is frost that white on the back, and when it comes up blue, it'll be a little bit diffused. And then there's a decal that goes over the top of that that gives you your grid lines. And I think that'll look good. So, for now, this is the Sloppy Modeler signing off for the first half of update number 3. Thank you. Okay, hey, welcome back to the Sloppy Modeler. Just showing you the next step in closing up the hull. So what I did is I took my my micro mark. It's a scriber. Essentially, the blade comes out, and using that front end, essentially scraped the entire way around the rim of that lower hull, removing all the paint from that area. Scraping worked better than was going to work better than using the MEK to dissolve it. And then same thing here, scraped all the way around that inner hull. I tried not to lose too much of the light blocking in there. It's already going to be a big enough challenge as it is, but this has all been wired. As I indicated in the last update, here's how I put in that light that goes into the BC bridge, BC deck and bridge. So this has been light blocked here for the navigation lights. Here's the blinker light, and then here's that white, and then same thing here. 3 little blinker lights go around, and we're ready to close this up. All I did was just splice these wires. This one actually runs all the way through, and then I spliced the feed to here and the feed from there, and I've got most of them hidden at this stage. And now it's just simply a matter of closing up the hull like so, and getting this lined up. Again, I only have the one locator pin, and like I said, I've been beefing about that since the beginning because of the challenge that you don't have pins where these lights would go. So now this is ready to epoxy up and seal that up nice and tight, and we'll make sure that that hopefully has as few light leaks as possible, especially when it gets rolling. So I think we've shown this before. As you light this up, that it gets pretty bright, which is nice. However, that edge leaks pretty good all the way around there. So now I see that I've taken care of a lot of that, but you know how you've got this gap here. You can see light come through. Well, the big key is to squeeze that down. And so here's the quandary. Do you squeeze it down tight to where you don't have the light coming through, or do you try to make it as even as possible with the hull beneath it? My thought is that I want this to be absolutely level with that piece there. So I don't want it deeper. If you push down too hard, it's going to go deeper. So I'd rather do that and then fill with like tulip or something, or spray on a darker paste. So I'd rather have that even, rather than just crushing it down to where it's below it, and then you've got a big gap to fill. So that is kind of the next step, is to go ahead and glue this up, and once this is glued up, then I can start painting on this bottom piece. I do have to put one piece in, and that is either this hull, either this lower sensor dome, which I think goes into the I think that goes into the USS Yamaguchi, and then a light goes into the bottom of that, or the other one, which is laying around here somewhere. I just had it recently, but we'll find it. Put the other piece in, but I need to drill the hole in there so that light can escape out of that. There is enough light in there. I just need to run a hole through there so that the pin that goes into that, which is that right there, it's got quite a bit of depth to it. That pin will go into here, into that lower sensor dome. So since I haven't lit this up, I'm going to use the standard I'm going to use the standard other piece to that, I think. Although now that I think about it, the A and the B both have this kind of lower sensor dome, and I'll have to look at the instructions to see what my thoughts are on that. It's kind of a clunky piece, I do admit, because it just kind of looks goofy in there. So maybe it goes like that. No, it's front to back. It's kind of a goofy piece, quite honestly. So let me work on this a bit, and let me get the hole closed up. Let me get that hole in there for light, and after we're done with that, we should be on to the nacelles. So we'll be back with you. Thank you. Hey, welcome to the Sloppy Modeler, coming to you here in update number 3. Just a quick few facts as we try to bring this into the body shop, if you will. And this is definitely one of my weaker points when I do modeling is filling seams and sanding and pulling that all together. So the top is really nice. The only seam on the saucer is right around this section here, and technically it's where my putty has stopped, and you can see where the other saucer starts. So what I did is I took a piece of my my tape, my Tamiya masking tape, the 6mm, and masked off that circle, because there's a ridge here that I didn't want to lose by sanding over the top of it. So I masked that section off, and then puttied in with my Tamiya white putty, or maybe it's Mr. Hobby's white putty. Mr. Hobby's white putty. Put that in and then sanded it, and now I'm going to take it into the primer booth and reprime this here area, and hopefully you know, we'll be 90% of the way there, maybe fill in a few more gaps with some spot putty, and then we'll be ready to do paint. But that seam was a major challenge to get done. The nacelles, which I'm not sure of putting my eye on at the moment, are both painted. Actually, they're in the paint booth ready for some yellow on the sides. The nacelles have both been white primered after the black, so they block light pretty nice. And this does do a really decent job now blocking the light, especially when this is pitch black. You can't see much coming through here at all. And one more coat will take care of that. And then a coat of white primer. I find it's easier to get my light grays over white primer than it is to do light grays over black. I just think it takes too many coats, and you start filling in all of the detail when you do that. So this saucer is coming together pretty good. On the secondary hull, I have filled in that gap. It's a groove there, and then I've used Mr. Surfacer here, Mr. Surfacer 1000. I guess it's Mr. Hobby, Mr. Surfacer 1000. And that is almost a gap filler, seam filler. And so I filled it with putty, did a sand. Now I filled it with one coat of Mr. Surfacer. This is the second coat, and I think that's going to get it done. But I also have filled in the seam here under the bottom. That was pretty bad, and across there. I think that's going to come together pretty nice. The seam across the top looks good. The rest of these seams actually look really good as well. So it's just simply a matter of getting this sanded up. And I did change out I sanded this out pretty well. That's just a pain in the neck, but I did get the light blocking done in that section there. That was really causing a lot of grief. I still am not thrilled with the way that this fits onto the saucer, because actually this piece sticks out, and I'll show you that when we're getting some more primer on here. But this piece is coming along, and as soon as that dries and I get that sanded up, that'll look pretty good. And we're on to painting the nacelles, you know, one step at a time. I'm going to go put a coat of primer on this and then do some more sanding on the secondary hull, and we will be back with you. Thank you. All right, hey, welcome back to part 3 and the USS Enterprise C, NCC 1701C actually. And we are at a bit of a crossroads and a milestone. So essentially the hull is in primer in the other room drying. The secondary hull is. Primary hull has been primered and sanded, and we're ready for color to go on to the primary hull. So that is an exciting time. And that leads to the quandary. And the nacelles have been primered the next step would be to actually route the wires through the pylons and glue this up, and then paint this and the nacelles all at the same time. Although I might put a coat of the base color on the nacelles due to the fact that it's hard to spray underneath there. So that is the next step on painting the nacelles and that piece, and that'll go as one piece before I put it into the secondary hull. And that leads me to my color quandary. I have bounced all around on some of these things for a couple of days on what color to spray the large gray or large blue pattern on top, that keystone pattern on top. The challenge is that if I use these decals, which are absolutely fantastic, so here's your nacelle decal, or your pylon detail, both here and here, which is this, to me it's almost an aquamarine color. This is definitely an aquamarine color, and same thing here with the top of the nacelles. Here's the color for the windows on the secondary hull. I'm not going to use these because I've got enough pieces here. It looks like there's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 18, 19, 20 of the yellow lifeboats, and I'm not sure how. I might just cut these out carefully and put them into onto the lifeboats after we're done. So because I want to paint this portion of it, even though this has got Aztecing in the decal, and I might go back on that just depending on how it looks, folks. So you can't necessarily hold me to that. But I was kind of looking forward to the challenge of learning how to paint these stripes in there. But I might just go ahead and use these and then save some grief. But that means that with the sensor bands here, and I think there's yet another set of decals here, that this also dealing with the strong back underneath the decking, and then all of this here pinstriping, which I believe goes on the nacelle, and I think these go on the nacelles in different spots. The directions are terrible with these PMT decals. So you can see here that they've got some pinstriping here. They've got some pinstriping here or Aztecing across the nacelle, and they've got and then other than that it just disappears. So I mean it's going to be placed as well as you think it's going to be placed. Same thing across the top. Here's a so you do get an image of the top of the nacelle. So here's these thin lines, which I'm taking to be these here, these really light faint lines, and I think that makes sense. So I have no idea where these 15s go, but that might come clearer on that piece of it. So that leads me to my dilemma. What color do I paint that large top keystone paint? And it's also found underneath here for the neck is that color, I believe, and I think this ring here is also that color that goes on top. So and the details in the directions for the AMT model. Pardon me for not being next to the microphone. Hold on a second, folks. I can't even find the directions right now. I'm in total sloppy mode. The directions there aren't any better. So I've been looking at source material and all kinds of things, but I think in order to make it blend, that large front ring has got to be that color. It's got to be this color of the dark aquamarine, and the same color as that this pinstripe is, in order for the whole thing to tie together. If I go with a blue, it's going to clash and it's going to look way out of place. So everything I've chosen so far is off. I just don't know where to go next for which color to put into there. It's obviously not this green, and I think probably the closest that I have might be something like this, which is light sea gray. and that's still the wrong gray for that one, so that's not going to work. And if I go with the just the light gray, that's way too dark, so that doesn't work. So I'm going to have to look at Tamiya's colors, because I want to use Tamiya. I'm going to have to look at the other colors in my kit to see if there's something there. But I'll be back with you once I've made a choice. And this is light blue. And, you know, that actually, now that I have it turned over, might be exactly what needs to go into there. Don't look at the color of the cap, look at what's in there. And if I look at that a little more closely, especially here, it might need to be darkened up a little bit with a little black, but that light blue might get it done. All right, that's a quick break, and the next I will be back with you is probably starting to apply color. So this is the end of USS Enterprise, the NCC 1701C by AMT, round 2 now at the 1/1400 scale. This is the Sloppy Modeler, and thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking the videos that you like. Please leave your comments on how I can do this better as we continue to move forward on this. And we will see you in the next update, which will be update number 4 with the painting of the actual model. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.